ॐ आप्यायन्तु ममाङ्गानि वाक्प्राणचक्षुश्रोत्रमथ बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि सर्वं ब्रह्मोपनिषदं माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्याम् मा ब्रह्म निराकरणमस्त्वनिराकरणमेऽस्तु तदात्मनि निरतेया उपनिषत्सु धर्मास्ते मयि सन्तु ते मयि सन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ may my limbs be strong. Also, let my speech, vital air, sight, hearing, and all the sense organs be vigorous. All existence is the Brahman of the Upanishads. May I never deny Brahman. May not Brahman deny me. Let there be no denial at all. Let there be no denial on my part, at least. Whatever virtues are there in the Upanishads, may they abide in me, who am devoted to the Atman. May they abide in me. Om, peace, peace, peace. Jnana Marga, the path of knowledge, a bird's eye view. It's not that I'm going to put a chart and show you briefly, but the whole gamut of this information of this path, I'm trying to club it in one talk. Hence, it will be too intense and quite thought-provoking as well. I don't know how far I'll be able to finish it. Let me try. Very often, while dealing with the problems of our life, either we avoid them or we flee from them, run away from them, which really means running away from ourselves, from the tyranny of the ego, from the fires of desires and hatred which rage in our heart. Jnana Marga, or the path of knowledge, is a way of life which puts end to this eternal running away from ourselves. It is a direct path which leads to the straight to our own self. Whichever path we may follow, it's always good for us to put questions, put existential questions. One night, Buddha heard a song. The celestials were singing, and Girish Chandra Ghosh has beautifully translated them in Bengali. Judaite chai. We mourn for rest, but alas, we keep roaming. We know not from where we come and whither we go. This put Buddha into a sea of thought. He started questioning. He wanted to face the reality. He wanted to see the world as it is. And he requested his father permission to go out of the kingdom and see the world. And we know further later what happened. It was the reality of the universe. World was revealed to him from Siddhartha to Gautama. Buddha is the journey. Such enquiries, if we make, it will take ultimately us to the center of our consciousness, which is the meeting point of the individual self and the supreme self. From time immemorial, from the ancient times, Hinduism has always maintained two paths towards the reality. We call two margas. Last month we discussed about it, the Jnana Marga and Bhakti Marga, the path of knowledge and the path of love, which has contributed much to its Catholicity and religious freedom. There are two different paths. These two different paths are two different orientation of an individual towards reality. And we have spoken about it, their differences in previous talk. Yet, quickly, I'll make a recapitulate the last month's talk. We know in the Bhakti Yoga, the ultimate reality is regarded as personal, saguna, with attributes. Hence, our relationship with the reality is I thou. It's a personal one, I thou relationship. Whereas in the path of knowledge, ultimate reality is regarded as impersonal, nirguna, without attributes, and hence our relationship, or rather, it's an impersonal attitude. It's I am that. That's the attitude. In the path of devotion, divine grace is the sole means for the realization of God, or for such salvation rather. But in the knowledge, in the path of knowledge, self effort is emphasized. And then in the path of knowledge, the starting point is an inquiry into our true nature of ourselves. It's an incontrovertible, immediate experience of our I consciousness. Whereas in the path of love, the Bhakti Marga, the starting point begins with faith, faith in an unknown supreme being. And all the effort is made to convert this immediate knowledge into immediate knowledge. Indirect knowledge to direct knowledge. Anyway, in both the paths, knowledge plays a great role, because the acharyas, the masters of Bhakti Yoga, insist on the scriptural studies and pay a lot of attention in ascertaining the nature and the criterion of reality, truth rather. Why then do we say Jnana Marga is a path of knowledge when knowledge is there even in the bhakti? The answer is, in the path of knowledge, Jnana is not merely the ultimate goal, but it's the sole means of attaining the goal. Jnana means the knowledge of the Atman, which is regarded as all sufficient. There are certain preliminary conditions to be fulfilled in order to be a competent. Competency has to be acquired. And you have been hearing this from a long time about the sadhana chatushtaya, the fourfold disciplines in the path of jnana marga, or the path of knowledge. They are discernment between the eternal and the fleeting, renunciation of all desires of here and hereafter, the six virtues such as self control, calmness, detachment, and forbearance, faith, all this. And then the fourth being intense longing for liberation. Furthermore, the aspirant is required to attain purity of mind through the performance of selfless actions, karma yoga. And then one has to have certain spiritual experience, not super conscious, super sensuous experience in the field of Saguna Upasana. We have dealt about all these upasanas in the quite a few talks which we had discussed in the previous months. So we can make out, by the time a person fulfills all this condition, our time is over to depart from this world. But if we are just to study Advaita philosophy as an academic, then we don't need to bother about all these things. But if we perceive the path of knowledge as a way of life, then we need to have certain basic conditions to be fulfilled. What are they? Brahmacharya. a very, very important discipline. Sri Krishna says in the Gita that he taught this yoga in the bygone days, and slowly the yoga was lost. Commenting on this, Shankara asks, how could yoga be lost? Because yoga was lost, having fallen into the hands of weak and indisciplined people. When people without no self control and weak mind pursue this, then the yoga is lost. That means to say how important any path if we follow, this is an important discipline. And it's all the more important when we follow the Advaita sadhana. Because some people have the idea that Advaita is a rational philosophy. All we need to have is a sharp, rational brain. That's a wrong idea. The truths which Advaita philosophy speaks of is beyond the ordinary reasoning. It's beyond ordinary discursive reasoning. And in order to understand this, we need to develop the medha. Medha is an intuitive power which we, through the practice of brahmacharya, we grow. The more we grow, it's a luminous power which clears our mind, which enables, it's like a light to go through the dark path of this world. So this intuition is very, very necessary. Start wherever we are going to start it from there. This is the very important, and to think, to practice Advaita sadhana, and at the same time, not to practice continence, is to hug the illusion, nothing more. The next discipline or the condition required is the guidance of an illumined teacher. It's customary in India for the scholars to begin their work with an invocatory verse, and most of them salute the divine. But in the Advaitic treatise, you can see they all started with the salutations to Guru, and they claim that without the blessings of the teacher, it is not possible to have the clear understanding, or the one cannot attain to Brahman. So Guru is not just a guide, but a conduit to spiritual power. In the Bhakti Marga, the devotee has God for his support. But in the Jnana Marga, in the path of knowledge, Guru is the only support. We have a story of Satyakama in the Chandogya Upanishad, where the boy goes to the Guru, and the Guru gives him 1,000 cows and tells him, go and graze this and come when this number is doubled. And the boy, obedience is the first thing, rule, takes the cows and goes to the forest and lives there. And in course of time, pure boy that he was, he communes with nature, and the nature gives him the knowledge of Brahman. And when he finds that he has fulfilled the conditions, he comes back. And when the boy returns, the teacher sees that his face is glowing with the luster, the brightness. So you have realized the Brahman. But the boy asks for the instruction. He says, the knowledge becomes fruitful only when it is directly communicated by a living teacher. So, such is the importance. It's a blessing to be under the guidance of a illumined or a well advanced teacher. All the rough edges of our personalities get smoothened. We become humble, and a humble mind is ready for receiving the truth. That is why Guru Seva is very, very essential in our spiritual life. The third important qualification or condition is the understanding of the ego. Strange, isn't it? We want to understand the Atma, not the ego. But we need to understand that. Sri Ramakrishna says, the sign of knowledge The first sign of knowledge is peaceful nature, and the second is the absence of ego. Before we take the path of the knowledge, we need to have the understanding of ego, because ego is the only thing which eclipses the light of the self. And sometimes the cause of the ego is also the inadequate knowledge of the ego. Strange to say. Once we understand through introspection what ego is, what is its nature, what is its limitation, that will enable us to eradicate or to keep it in a low profile. We see in the Mahabharata, Sri Krishna saying Duryodhana, you are an arrogant man. You have never served elders and the teachers. If we serve elders and teachers, then our ego remains in a low profile. So that is why the knowledge of ego is also an essential thing to understand, how to have right perspective of it. And the fourth is impersonal attitude. The goal of the path of knowledge is the realization of the impersonal. We can be true to this ideal and seek it sincerely only if we have an impersonal idea from the beginning. Very funny, when I joined the order, always I used to think of this, and what we think we speak. And I always used to Atman Brahman, this was my way of talking. And my sisters used to make fun of me. But doesn't matter. Swamiji says, think of it, dream of it, speak of it. Slowly the idea will sink in. Without that, it won't. Even maybe I might not have an idea of what I was talking. Doesn't matter. It may be my imagination, but today's imagination will be tomorrow's reality. Before, though the Jnana Marga is leading us to this, the light, the within, but we have to go through this narrow gate of ego. So this impersonal outlook is very, very essential. The thing is, most of the people who profess to be Advaitins, they hold on very strongly to their individuality, to their personality. We have in Sri Ramakrishna's Gospel, Mahima Charan Chakravarti. Such an egoistic man, holding on to the idea of his personality. This happens, but we need to have a natural, positive inclination to the pursuit of knowledge, not showing off. Usually, I'm the follower of Jnana. That sort of arrogance you can see in many people. And he used to say, this Mahimacharan, very funny, I'm digressing. He would say, his teacher, some very funny name, everything is funny about him, and strange rather. He said, my teacher has told me to practice Advaita Vedanta. And Sri Ramakrishna has to practice Dvaita because he is a devotee of Mother Kali. Anyone can understand what he is speaking. He just doesn't know what is either Advaita or what is Dvaita. With so much of arrogance, he is a competent fellow. And Sri Ramakrishna is not. He would say, Narendra has a bit of rajas. And Sri Ramakrishna would make, how much do I have? You still have redness. Means red belongs to, it depicts rajas, He would say to Sri Ramakrishna, you still have red. That means you have still rajas. So that's how people think about it. But from the beginning, a genuine feeling of impersonal attitude we need to cultivate, and to look upon God as impersonal, and to hold on ourselves as personalities, whatever it might be, it is not Advaita. And the third and the fifth of the qualification or the requirement is love of knowledge. What bhakti is to a devotee of God, knowledge is to a seeker of jnana. A seeker of impersonal Brahman, he always values knowledge. Knowledge is a great wealth for him, and it enables the aspirant to detach very easily from the clutches of Kamini Kanchan. That's the beauty. Sri Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitramiha vidyate. There is nothing greater, greatest, greater thing as, or edifying, purifying thing than the knowledge. Knowledge is the greatest purifier. So, such is the greatness of knowledge. And even why spiritual knowledge, even the secular knowledge. You see, most of the great thinkers and scientists, they were so simple and they were even poor. You see that Madame Curie, one who discovered this radium, she's such a poor lady, poor couple they were. And so humble too, not showing off. When the reporters came, they wanted to interview. She was sitting in front of her house on the footsteps, the veranda, and they asked, "May we meet Madame Curie?" Oh, she has gone out because she knew they wouldn't have, if they had known who is Madame Curie, they would not have asked her that. So, who are you? I am the housekeeper, she said. And the lady has gone out. See, she could tell herself as a housekeeper and conceal her identity. See, the wonderful, if she were to show off, that is what the true knowledge brings, humility. Vidya dadati vinayam. The knowledge brings humility. And love of knowledge is a very great thing. And one story we have from the Acharyas, the post Shankara Advaitin, he was one Vachaspati Mishra. It is said he was a great philosopher, Advaitic philosopher. He has got a separate school of thought, and he has written a lot of glosses for Shankara's um, Vedanta Sutras and all that. A very great man of learning. So much he was at that time writing the gloss. And one day he was writing, and the light of the lamp, the oil, in those days, oil lamp, you see, it's becoming dimmer and dimmer and dimmer. And the more the light is becoming dim, his concentration is increasing. In the dim light, he's going on writing. And suddenly, the light became bright. And the wick went up, and oil was poured into the lamp. And that, it disturbed him. Suddenly, in the darkness, you are writing, and suddenly light comes. So he just lifted his head and looked. A young lady was pouring oil and trimming that. And bluntly he asked her, "Who are you?" She said, "I'm your wife." He had forgotten that he had a young wife at home. So much he was engrossed in writing the gloss, he had completely forgotten everything who was providing. And look at the lady, the greatness of these women, silently doing their part, not disturbing the thought of the husband, allowing him to do what he loves to do, and doing all the services behind. Who is keeping the food, who is washing his clothes, who is giving him the hot water? Nothing. He knows nothing. Day after day he is just going on thinking, and all he does is writes and then rests, writes, doesn't know. So bluntly he had asked the question. And then when he knew that she was his wife, he felt so bad. He said, "I will make your name immortal." So he gave for the school of thought, his school of thought, Bhamati school of thought. Bhamati. Bha is brightness, illumined. Mati is buddhi. One, she who has a luminous buddhi. That's sattvika, pure buddhi. So he gave that. That shows how much of importance which is needed, how much of love of knowledge is needed. So with this few qualifications, these we may get strength to embark on this path of knowledge. The whole rationale of Jnana Marga rests on this fundamental thesis that realizing one's own true self, it is possible to understand, know the ultimate reality and the secret of creation, the mystery of creation. Questions have been asked in the Upanishad. For example, in the Mundaka Upanishad, we come across Kasminno bhagavo vijñate sarvamidam vijñatam bhavati iti. What is that? By knowing which everything else is known. And again, elsewhere, it is said, by knowing one lump of clay, all that is made of clay is known. The answer given in the Chandogya Upanishad means the answer is by knowing the Atman, one is able to know everything else. It's a subjective approach. The seeker of the path of knowledge always has a subjective approach in understanding and in solving the problems of life. So the self is a starting point in Jnana Marga. And we know you have been hearing all this. The self has different dimensions. And all these are called by the name Atman. The word sheath, as Shankaracharya says, the kosha, it's Shankara's invention. But the Upanishads always call it Atma, Annamaya Atma, Pranamaya Atma, Manomaya Atma. This is how it is called. So, what's the definition of Atma? The definition of Atman is the Atman is so called because it pervades, it receives, and experiences objects in the world, and because from it the world derives its existence. So, this definition covers both the empirical self and the transcendental self. What's the empirical self? The enjoyer, the bhokta, and the karta, the doer, which we all are aware of. We know that he is the jiva. We all go by the name jivas. We are all jivas because we are the bhoktas and we are the kartas. We are the enjoyers and we are the doers. So this part of our knowledge of self we do have. But the transcendental aspect of our self is hidden from us, from our understanding. The investigation into the nature of experience led our sages to analyze, to come to the conclusion that the basic factor in experience is awareness, consciousness. And how do they define it? That through which one sees, hears, smells, speaks, and tastes is called consciousness. See, we are always with it. Everything is going on in and through it. Yet we do not understand the real nature of it. You see, it is the unchanging sakshin, the witness of all our actions and thoughts. This realization of the inner self is the first and the proximate ideal of Jnana Marga. When we realize, because it's the first thing, it's the closest thing to us. Once we realize ourselves as the Atman, then we understand that it has higher and wider dimensions. And the ultimate realization is of Brahman is the ultimate goal. The primary goal, the immediate goal is the realization of the Atman. I'm making it different both. Some of the Advaitins may not accept this, but Shankara in his commentary clearly shows us the difference. And even the other acharyas of the Bhakti Marga, they also say there is a difference between the realization of the Atman and the realization of Brahman. Both even in the Bhakti schools accept. And Ramanujacharya styles this as Atma Avalokana. So then what is the difference between the Bhakti Marga and the Jnana Marga? If the two realizations are different, then what is the difference? There is. All the Bhakti teachers say the realization of the Atman need not lead to the realization of God. It can take place only through the grace of God. This is the difference. There is a qualitative difference between the two realization of the Atman and the realization of God in the Bhakti path. But whereas Shankara, the Advaitins, deny this. For them, there is no qualitative difference. It's quantitative. It is the progressive expansion of the limited consciousness. That is the realization of Brahman. Only within me what I am realizing in course of time, in due course, I will realize that this whole and the part, the other is the fullness. So from even Ramanuja defines this. We have got a famous Upanishads in the Kathopanishads thing. Nityo nityanam chetanashchedam. We say eternal among the non-eternal. That is how the Advaitins translate. But Ramanuja says nityo nityanam. So that's a difference. So this much of difference there in the Advaitins, in the Advaita Vedanta, there is no qualitative difference. It is only the degree of the manifestation of this realization or the expression of this realization. Rather, that's the proper way of saying. So this much is about the Vedanta, what we can understand at the moment, what we are in. Now, have the Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, does it have any sadhanas to be practiced? The practical suggestions or practical classes or something like that to practice this? The teachers of Advaita are silent about it. Shankara doesn't chalk out any detailed sadhanas for it. And even Swami Vivekananda also hasn't left much detailed information about his sadhanas. Everyone, you open any treatise, you will see the discussion going on and on about Maya, the nature of the Atman, the cosmology, these, that, everything. But no much light is not thrown on the sadhanas. Why? There must be something intrinsic about this path. You see, sadhana means it's an act. An act where an end is attained. There is a sadhana and there is a sadhya. Something I'm trying to do something in order to attain something. And I'm the striver. So there is three things: the sadhana, sadhya, and sadhaka. The effort put, what is attained, and the striver, all the three. That means to say, it implies threefold division in reality. It's a movement in space and time, which the Advaita Vedanta completely denies as illusion. So if there is any sadhana in the Advaita Vedanta, it should be devoid of this trichotomy of sadhana, sadhya, sadhaka. These things shouldn't be there. How is it? And Shankara, in his commentary, says or has two approaches to reality. One, like how I said, the Bhakti Marga. It's not actually a Bhakti Marga here. It involves these three. That is, there is a sadhana, and there is something to be attained called sadhya, and there is the seeker called a sadhaka. These three are there. It is the ritualistic worship or the meditation on theistic meditation, Saguna Brahma Upasanas. So that is not for us. And if we are the followers of Advaita Vedanta. And then there is a second approach, which is devoid of these three, this trichotomy. It's directly, and it leads to the direct realization of the impersonal Brahman. And I think this is what truly Advaitic realization means, a bold assertion, of course. It is said this direct experience of Brahman is an ontological fact, Vastu Tantra. It's an existential fact which we cannot deny, and it is independent of human effort. Very strange. In Advaita Vedanta, self-effort is needed, but here it doesn't depend upon human effort. And what is it? For the realization of Brahman, no other effort is needed other than removal of ignorance. And this removal of ignorance is not an act. It's not something like we are peeling a potato. No, it's not an act, but an ontological truth implied in the highest experience. And I quote Shankara: for the acquisition of the non dual knowledge, no effort is required. All that is needed is to stop superimposing the not self on the self, or stop identifying the self with the not self. That means to say, the constant practice of this discrimination should go on in the sadhaka. There's a beautiful work, Advaita Siddhi, which says, Asupter, Amrityur, Nayeta Vedanta Chintanam. Till you fall asleep on the pillow, on the bed, until the last breath of your life, carry on this Advaitic reasoning. So much of importance is given because the idea has to sink and sink and sink within us. A very hard task, very tough. But the post Shankara Advaitins, they all have accepted that they have adapted Patanjali's system of yoga for their meditation. Anyway, now the Upanishads speak of certain techniques of meditation, or rather, some technique to come in to come to this realization. What are they? You all know that Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. You have been hearing this from a long time. So, what is Shravana? Just it goes by name, hearing about it. It's not just hearing. Shravana is determining the import of the scriptural statement with the help of 6 marks. They call Shadlinga. It's a big science in itself. I'm not going to it because it's too theoretical. You all will go to sleep. So I'm not going into detail of it, and we don't need it. And but in general, what it means is Shravana is not just hearing, deep study to understand the real import of the scripture. This is what is called as Shravana. What about Manana? It's a wonderful thing, Manana, I liked it very much, this explanation. Manana is the logical process of gaining the correct understanding of the scriptures through positive and negative method. It is called as Anvaya Vyatireka. I'll tell you what. Don't be frightened with the names. What is it? Supposing I see there's a stump of tree and I mistake it as a man. Now, the positive method is it conveys me the nature of that thing, that it is a post. So, but the authors say it is a post. It is mere saying that it is a post will not remove the illusion or the wrong perception that it is a man. It will not. So you need to say along with that, it is not a man. Just it is a post won't do. It is not a man. It is not a man. This negative thing is called Vyatireka. The positive, it is a post. That is a positive, Anvaya. And that it is not a man is the negative way of giving the right knowledge of the thing. For example, the scripture says, Tattvamasi, thou art that. Now, I started saying, thou art that, thou art that. Thou art that will not give me anything. It will not bring me the proper understanding of the reality. I am that or thou art that. What does it mean? No, it has to be complemented with other. That I am not a psychophysical organism, I am not a pitiable person, I am not a bound person, I am not a sorrowful person. I need to remind myself, because these are the things which always I come in contact. So every moment it wouldn't just be enough for me to tell, oh, I am the supreme spirit, I am the infinite Atman. No, but the second way of telling is, you are not this, you are not this, you are not this. This is the process of manana is. It's not just saying the positive. And we need to remember the negative way of approaching the truth. So this is called as manana. And what's nididhyasana? Generally, people say nididhyasana means meditation. But nididhyasana is a culmination of the process of shravana and manana. It's an understanding of reality through the process of penetration into the self, intensification of this intuitive awareness, which we got it through the Atma Sakshatkara, from the realization through that we attain to this nididhyasana. So, up to this is the general um, ideas of the practice, what can be done in the Advaita sadhanas. And there is another thing, another 2 points I will discuss, and then I will finish it. The second thing is about Atma Vichara, self enquiry. This is the most important spiritual experience or the exercise which is characteristic and unique of the path of knowledge. Self enquiry. Here, every kind of object and objectification has to be dispensed with. And it's a movement going backward into the self. This is the process of the famous Neti Neti. You all have heard this Neti Neti in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna speaks much about it. So, Neti Neti. This is the process. And it's a very powerful um, exercise, must have been in the bygone days, in the Upanishadic days. And we get this from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. The Upanishad itself uses this Neti Neti statements 5 times. That shows the importance of it. Because in order to understand or realize the truth of Brahman, which is attributeless, Shankara says there is no other way. And Yagnavalkya says this is the best instruction that can be given on the Advaita sadhana. And Shankara says that's the only way you can uh, deal with it, because there is nothing to point out say this is how it is. No. So this is not, this is not, this is not. And then we come only point it. That's all. We can't say this is the reality. That means it's objectification. This is not, this is not, this is not. That is called as na idam iti, na idam iti, neti, neti. That's how it is. And much of its and the tradition has been lost. But lucky for us, a great personality rose in South India, the great sage Ramana Maharshi. He revived this in the modern age, and he gave it an independent status. He showed how, by questioning oneself, who am I? It's possible to follow the trail of the I consciousness to its source, which is the Atman. This self inquiry, we should remember, is not an intellectual process, but it is essentially a intuitive process. Unless we have, as I told you, unless we have developed this medha, the intuitive power in us, to certain extent, it is not possible to carry on this self inquiry for a long time. So brahmacharya is essential. And there is another beautiful technique, that is pratibodha technique. This comes from the Kenopanishad. If we carefully analyze our thoughts and actions, we see that they're mostly going on unconsciously, without a least awareness of ours. We are not at all aware of what's going on. So many thoughts, we just even don't know, but constantly the mind is thinking and thinking and thinking. No relationship between two thoughts, nothing, and we don't have any control over it. And all our mistakes, all our failures, all our uh, failures, and how we succumb to our inner impulses and the outer experience, all this is due to the cause, due to the reason that because of this unconscious drift of our mind. But the first and the foremost important thing in our spiritual life is to cultivate this awareness. The constant self awareness is known as pratibodha. I remember when we were young, we used to ask, of course, we all met first the Swamis and then only the Matajis. Through them, we came to know about Sharda Mat, and even our Matajis also used to say the same thing, that when we have the problem with the control of mind, the Matajis would say, just first ignore it, ignore them, and always remember you are pure Atman. This way of thinking, to just to look upon your own thoughts and action objectively, to think of yourself in an objectively. So that will help you to. It's like the Drisha Viveka which we study. But at that time we didn't know, but they used to teach us. So look upon them as it's happening to someone, it's something different from you. You move away from that thought. So they used to teach us. But that was actually that they were trying to make me understand. But I never at that time beginning, we were young, we didn't understand it. But that's they were trying helping us to create the self-awareness, strong self-awareness in us. And Shankara says in the Kenopanishad, it says, Pratibodha Viditam Matam. That's the mantra in it. And Shankara explains it. The self is known when it is grasped as the witness of each state of consciousness, which means behind every thought and action, there is a silent witnessing self. By holding on to it, one can remain fully conscious and alert. This is the way. Hold on to it. Hold on to it. Don't identify yourself with the thought. This is what they taught us. And what happens when once we practice this? First, it increases, enlarges our awareness of the self. And how does it do? The knowing ones say that between two thoughts, for a fraction of a second, the self remains in its true nature as a luminous Atman. By the practice of this technique, we can lengthen the interval between two thoughts, which will give us the knowledge of our true self, or which will bring true transformation of consciousness in us. This is how the realization of Atman takes place in us. And another thing is, the technique will give us lot of control over ourselves. It increases the capacity for our self-control, because Atman is not only the source of consciousness, it is the source of power. Atmana vindate viryam. Through Atman, one attains virya, strength. And Swamiji is the teacher of strength. He is the very embodiment of strength. Swamiji says, teach unto yourself the nature of your true nature of yourself. See how glory will come, goodness will come, purity will come, infinite strength will come when the self is realized. Teach yourself and teach unto others. And this is what is most important now. The days we are going through, the dark days we are going through this 20th century, 2020. So we need a lot of strength to stand as our pure Atman. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming today for the talk, and for those watching now or later on YouTube. Worth mentioning that today would have been the 94th birthday of revered Pravrajika Jnana Mataji, who started our centre here in Sydney, the first foreign centre of Sri Sharadamat. And some of us were there with Mataji on the 8th of November last year at the Ramakrishna Sharada Mission in Tiruvananthapuram. We were there for her birthday. Very happy memories we have of that. And I do wonder how, if Mataji was still with us today, how she would have felt about the fact that a woman called Kamala, whose mother hails from Chennai, is going to be occupying one of the most senior positions in the world, and possibly from that senior position go even to a bigger position, if you can follow what I mean. So this is a very interesting day in history today, and I think that's why we've got a smaller audience. I know there are people just mesmerized at what's happening at the moment. And whatever troubles we've had this year, this is surely a very bright day, a very bright spark, a bright light is emerging out of all the gloom of this year. We have this week we have the weekly yoga class on Thursday from 10 to 11:15 a.m. We have the fortnightly spiritual evening discussion on Friday the 13th, and discussion will be led by Gayatri Pranaji as usual. And then next Sunday we have the special celebration, Kali Puja celebration. We'll be very happy to have our good friend here, very good and talented friend, Tanim Hayat Khan. He'll be performing a recital on the Sarod, and we'll have talks by Dr. Shankar Karunaniti and Gayatri Pranaji. And as we always do, we'll have a candlelight offering ceremony to Mother Kali, followed by distribution of the offered sweets and savories. We sadly still have some limitations because of the COVID-19, the audience size. So we are still limiting that to 25. And we would appreciate people letting us know if they're coming so it can be properly organized for that. And we have a donation plate there, donation box up the back, and we'll conclude with listening to a guided meditation by revered Mataji.
The rishis of Samaveda sing. Listen to the melodious music of the divine poet. He plays upon the flute of love. The notes soar to high heavens and reach the distant stars. They dance on the raging waves of the sea. The earth, the sea, the sky, the stars are all woven together by the soft strains of the divine music. Its vibrations echo through the corridors of time in the endless canopy of the sky. That same music is ringing through every part of our body. The divine light of cosmic intelligence, which is of golden radiance and sweet resonance, descends from its infinite abode to inspire us when we invoke its presence in our meditation. O Lord of divine light and silent peace, mayest thou accept the praises recited in silence by our hearts. in the voiceless language of our yearning and love. Let us try to feel a stream of divine consciousness that is flowing gently and quietly, silently and smoothly through our veins. The light of supreme intelligence is shining in our intellect and illumining the pathway of our nerves and vital powers. The auspicious music accompanying the dance of the cosmic spheres is reverberating through our senses and organism in the celestial rhythmic flow. Awake, O sleeping beauty of my soul, the time of slumber and darkness is over. The storm and thunder of the night of ignorance and forgetfulness has passed away. The bright and glorious dawn of wisdom is appearing within the heart to lead us from triumph to triumph along the long illumined path of life. Let us tell ourselves we have reached the safe harbor of our real source, the sweet shores of perpetual purity, the quiet land of undisturbed peace, which is our real home. We had strayed away long and far into the turbulent unrealities of ephemeral pleasures and the dark whirlpools of worldly attractions. Today, in these few moments of quietness, let us try to relax, connect ourselves, and feel the presence of our inner soul. Let us try to see the limitless ocean of the blue waters of the cosmic heart pulsating within us. Look closely. It is there. The large, expansive stretches of the blue waters of the cosmic heart. We are a part and parcel of the cosmos. So the cosmic heart, the limitless expanse of the blue waters, are there within our heart. It is resplendent with a silver radiance. See the surface of the water? Shining with a silver radiance because of the presence of divinity hidden inside the heart. Just that. We are not puny little human beings. We carry the infinite cosmic heart within us. The heart that is pulsating within us is in tune with the rhythm of the cosmic heart. Feel the expanse of infinity within and around us. Forget the limitations of the body. That is a transparent covering. We are within and without. The glittering, shining, resplendent waters of the cosmic heart are slowly pulsating gently moving inside us and outside us. We are one with that. That is our real nature. These limitations of individuation, personalized form, our imagination. We are infinite. Just feel the flow of strength rushing through every part of the body, which can stand as a balance between the infinity inside and the infinity outside. We are revived and renewed with the tremendous energy of infinite divinity. Just let us try to feel ourselves light, not heavy, just floating in the infinite shining blue waters of cosmic dimensions. It's all still, peaceful, quiet, silent. God is silence, and in silence we can experience God. There is silence inside you. There is silence outside you. Feel the silence. Give up all limitations. We are infinite. Hari Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace.